Welcome to Twilight Terror Stories. Twilight is not just the end of day, it's the beginning of something else. A time when the shadows stretch and fear takes its first breath. You've stepped into that moment now, and the stories are waiting. Let them find you. The discord began subtly, threading itself into the quiet fabric of my second night within those old brick confines. Exhaustion draped over me after a long shift. I lay adrift in bed when it started, a faint, dry friction from the floor above. It spoke of feet being dragged, a hesitant scuffing across floorboards. My first thought, naturally, was of the tenant overhead, perhaps restless. But the sound persisted, a slow, rhythmic scrape, 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 pacing distilled to its barest essence. This building, a fortress of thick walls, usually swallowed whole the sounds of neighboring lives, no murmuring voices, no television drone, only this. A filament of unease tightened within me, yet weariness won out, pulling me under into sleep. Morning found me unsettled, the memory of the sound clinging like damp air. If it recurred, I resolved I would investigate. My apartment occupied the middle tier of the 3-story structure. The uppermost floor held but a single dwelling. Ms. Gable, the property agent, had mentioned a man residing there upon my moving in, though his presence remained purely theoretical. I'd never glimpsed him. The building itself was a relic of crimson brick, exhaling the dust of decades. Its narrow staircase groaned selectively underfoot. The hallway walls wore a faded, nicotine-beige resignation, and a solitary overhead bulb hummed a low, electric dirge. The doors were slabs of aged wood, fitted with heavy brass knobs that yielded with arthritic reluctance. On my third night, the sound returned. I was immersed in some flickering drama on my laptop screen when the familiar scuffing intruded. Pausing the playback, I tilted my head, listening. The papery rustle drifted slowly across the geography of my ceiling. A quickening beat pulsed in my chest. I rose, climbing onto the sofa to press my ear flat against the cool plaster. Faint, yes, but undeniably there. The notion of lodging a complaint surfaced, then dissolved. It was barely 9 o'clock, and the noise wasn't loud, merely peculiar. After an indeterminate passage of time, it ceased. I retreated to bed, the strange tension knotting low in my gut. Days dissolved into a week, the shuffling becoming an erratic punctuation mark in my routine. Sometimes it whispered its presence in the pre-dawn quiet before work. Other times it coaxed me from sleep near midnight. Always the same signature, the soft drag of feet, a pause pregnant with silence, then the drag resuming. No accompanying sounds ever breached the solitude, no door hinges groaning, no coughs, no whispers, just the footsteps. The truly jarring moment arrived late one evening. The clock had slipped past 11. Fatigue weighed heavy as I ascended the creaking stairs. Turning the key, I stepped inside my apartment, the heavy door clicking shut with its customary finality. The timed hallway light cast its weak, buzzing glow. I shed my coat, kicked off my shoes, let my bag drop, and then I heard them. Footsteps descending the stairs from the 3rd floor. Finally, I thought, the elusive neighbor. Eager for a simple hello, some human anchor in this oddness, I pulled my door open again. The hallway yawned, empty. Yet the footsteps continued their descent, drawn nearer, each tread distinct. My stomach clenched. Rooted in the doorway, I listened, the air growing thick. The sound passed the exact space where a person should have stood, right before me, and carried on down towards the ground floor, fading into silence. A chill traced patterns on my skin. My heart hammered against my ribs. Retreating inside, I threw the deadbolt and leaned back against the solid wood, telling myself it was acoustic trickery, perhaps sounds traveling through dormant pipes. But the building's plumbing was stoically silent. No clanging radiators or gurgling water lines. Only stillness, punctuated by those phantom steps. Over the following week, I broached the subject with Ms. Gable. She offered a shrug, a verbal pat on the head. No previous complaints of this nature, she assured me. The gentleman upstairs? Rarely around. Perhaps he was rearranging furniture, she ventured, a suggestion that rang hollow against the sound's unwavering ambulatory character. I also inquired with Mrs. Davies, the woman inhabiting the ground floor apartment. Had she noticed anything unusual? Any footsteps? A polite, swift denial. Her smile was a curtain drawn quickly, signaling no desire for further conversation. I let it drop. My attention sharpened towards the shared spaces. The stairs possessed their own vocabulary of creaks, but inconsistently. The overhead light occasionally flickered, a weak pulse in the gloom. The third-floor apartment door presented a mundane face, standard peephole, unremarkable doormat. One evening, feeling faintly ridiculous, I pressed my ear to its wood, straining for any sign of life within. Nothing. A soft rap yielded only silence. Unwilling to press further, I retreated to my own floor. After that, the footsteps grew bolder, more frequent. They adhered to no discernible schedule, yet rarely did a day pass without their visitation. Sometimes the scuffing greeted me the moment I returned from work around 6. Other times it materialized near midnight or bled into the small hours. Always that same dragon cadence, evocative of someone moving with immense effort, or perhaps indifference to lifting their feet. It frayed my nerves raw. I'd freeze mid-motion anywhere in my apartment, listening intently, trying to triangulate the source. My ceiling, the hallway, the stairs. It seemed to drift, yet the slow, deliberate pattern remained constant. One Friday night, patience snapped. I was at my small kitchen table, halfway through a sandwich, when the scraping commenced directly overhead. Pushing back my chair, keys clutched tight, I surged into the hallway, determined to intercept whoever, whatever, was responsible. I took the stairs to the third floor 2 at a time. The building held its breath, the only sound the faint electrical hum above. Reaching the landing, I pressed my ear against the silent door. Stillness. Tentatively, heart thudding with the trespasser's anxiety, I tried the knob. Locked fast. The impulse to knock again warred with a sudden, profound unease. I turned, descended back to the second floor, and paused. The air in the corridor felt unnaturally cold. My breath came short and fast. Goose flesh prickled my arms. Silence reigned. It was as if the entire building was listening alongside me. I retreated into my apartment, securing the lock and banishing the shadows with every light I possessed. My small domain, living room flowing into a tiny kitchen, a brief hallway, bath, bedroom, felt suddenly inadequate, the off-white walls too thin. Through the old blinds covering the living room window, streetlights cast long, distorted fingers. For minutes, I stood motionless, adrift. Eventually, I sank onto the sofa, summoning the television's low murmur for company, though my ears remained strained, alert for any deviation from the manufactured calm. My chest felt tight. My gaze kept snagging on the front door. Hours later, preparing for bed, the sound returned. This time, however, it originated from outside my door in the hallway, slow steps ascending the stairs. Adrenaline surged, hot and sharp. I crept to my apartment door, pressing close, listening with fierce concentration. The footsteps reached my landing, paused directly outside. I held my breath, slick sweat filming my palms. Then they resumed, continuing their slow journey upward towards the third floor. No voice, no shadow beneath the door, no tangible sign of presence. A shiver traced its icy path down my spine. The urge to fling the door open battled a paralyzing tension. After a long minute, I quietly engaged the deadbolt. Another minute crawled by before I risked pressing my ear to the wood again. Only silence answered. The quiet felt vast, absolute. The following morning, sleep-deprived and frayed, I hatched a plan. I would lie in wait. Fetching a small folding chair from my living room, I positioned it near my door in the hallway. For nearly an hour that evening, I sat there, pretending to read on my phone, eyes flicking constantly towards the stairwell. Nothing. No one. The corridor offered only the faint, lingering scent of old wood polish and profound stillness. Feeling foolish yet deeply frustrated, I retreated inside. Later, around 10, the steps manifested again. This time, they seemed to originate from the ground floor, beginning their deliberate ascent. Scrape, pause, scrape, pause. My muscles coiled. Phone in hand, I eased my door open a fraction. The hallway stretched empty under the buzzing light. Leaning out, I peered down the stairwell. Vacant. Yet the footsteps climbed relentlessly. They reached the second-floor landing, my landing, and halted. The air grew heavy, charged. I stood frozen, breath caught in my throat, the phone's screen casting a pale glow on my hand. Then the sound continued, mounting the final flight towards the third floor. Once it reached the summit, silence fell like a curtain. I slipped back into my apartment, locked the door, and collapsed onto the sofa, legs trembling. My mind raced, grappling with the stark emptiness of the hallway juxtaposed against the undeniable clarity of the footsteps. Steps that carried weight, that elicited faint groans from the aged floorboards. The chill returned, settling deep in my bones. I stared at my locked door, logic failing, comprehension fraying. I tried querying Mrs. Davies downstairs once more. She opened her door only a sliver, her face taut. "Nothing to report," she insisted, her eyes darting nervously. When I pressed about anyone else using the stairs, she just shook her head, murmuring that the top apartment was rented, yes, but the tenant was seldom seen. Something about the building being old, noises being unsurprising. Then the door clicked shut, leaving me alone again in the beige corridor. Another week bled away, bringing no change. Daily, at unpredictable intervals, the shuffling footsteps made their presence known. Sometimes circling overhead like a caged thing, Other times traversing the stairs, ascending or descending. Sometimes I'd fling my door open a heartbeat too late. Other times I'd catch the sound mid-stride, only to be met with utter vacancy. Ms. Gable remained unhelpful, citing a lack of proof of any genuine disturbance. The building, she reiterated, was structurally sound. A maintenance worker checked the plumbing and wiring, finding nothing amiss. One night, resolve hardened within me. I would confront this. I waited by my door, ear pressed to the cool wood, listening to the building's quiet breaths. An hour passed in silence. Then, near midnight, they began. Upstairs, directly above me. The familiar scuffing traversed the ceiling, then drifted towards the stairwell, beginning the descent. Timing it precisely, I wrenched the door open at the exact moment the sound should have been passing my threshold. Nothing. Empty air. But the footsteps didn't falter. They continued their measured pace downwards towards the first floor. Leaning over the railing, I scanned the stairwell below. Vacant. The distinct echo of someone descending filled the narrow space, yet no form, no shadow accompanied it. My mouth felt like parchment. My arms prickled violently. Seconds later, the sound faded into the stillness of the ground floor. I slammed my door, threw the locks, my heart galloping as if I'd run miles. From that point forward, a state of hypervigilance became my norm. Sleep offered little refuge, fragmented by listening. Every settling creak of the old building sent jolts through my system. A persistent tightness took root in my chest. Focusing at work grew difficult, my thoughts circling back to those phantom footsteps. Coming home meant pausing in the hallway, bracing myself. Some nights offered blessed silence. Others brought the shuffling cadence multiple times. I'd open my door repeatedly, staring into the empty corridor, searching for optical illusions, auditory tricks, but the faint vibration I sometimes felt through the floorboards under my feet confirmed its unsettling reality. So tangible, yet utterly invisible. Weeks have now passed, mired in this unnerving stasis. Sometimes, in desperation, I speak aloud into the quiet apartment, addressing the source of the sound. "Hello? Is anyone there?" My words hang unanswered. The footsteps, if present, continue their rhythm, unperturbed until they cease of their own accord. Moments arise when I feel an undeniable presence just outside my door, a palpable weight in the air, but the peephole always reveals the same empty, dimly lit hallway. I cannot dislodge the conviction that the footsteps belong to someone, or something, unseen. The fear is constant, but beneath it lies a deeper, more profound disquiet I struggle to name. Moving out flickers as an option. The rent is mercifully low, the apartment itself adequate, but this unending tension erodes my peace. How can a home feel like a siege? I mentioned it haltingly to a friend who offered a dismissive chuckle about hauntings. I lack belief, yet possess only the evidence of my senses. Slow, dragging footsteps, day or night, pacing above or navigating the stairs. Thick brick walls that silence all else, yet amplify this one anomaly. An empty corridor greeting every investigation. No answers from the agent nor the neighbor. Each time the sound begins, my pulse leaps, freezing me in place. My breathing shallows, a familiar knot tightening in my stomach. I despise the feeling. The sense of being observed, monitored by emptiness. Attempts to capture it, to gain objective proof, have failed. My phone records only ambiguous creaks, the essence of the sound lost in digital translation. A small voice recorder left running overnight yielded nothing but static and the building's nocturnal ticks. I don't know how much longer I can remain here, yet inertia holds me fast. A stubborn part of me craves resolution, clings to the possibility of a logical, mundane explanation. Eccentric plumbing, peculiar acoustics, but each time I open my door to that perfect, impossible synchronicity of sound and emptiness, feel the hair rise on my arms, the simple answers crumble. It's past midnight now. I sit at my small kitchen table, this narrative spooling out under the soft buzz of the overhead light. Outside, street lights bleed through the blinds, painting pale stripes across the dark living room. I am waiting, listening, wondering if the footsteps will return tonight. My pulse is already a quick drum against my ribs. My shoulders ache with tension. A faint creak just echoed from the stairs. The building settling or something more. All I know is the pattern persists. Someone, or something, walks these stairs, paces the floor above, and remains unseen. I think I hear it again now, starting softly overhead. My heart constricts. A wave of cold washes over me. I'm going to check. One more time, I'll open the door. Perhaps tonight, finally, I'll see what walks there. Or perhaps, like always, I will see nothing at all. The precise moment awareness dawned that the presence shadowing my steps could parrot human speech was the moment I understood my peril had plunged into depths previously unfathomed. What began as a solitary pilgrimage into the wilderness, a bid to silence the clamor in my head, warped swiftly into a harrowing ballet of predator and prey, orchestrated by an entity utterly defying logic. Had I only heeded the murmurs of the town folk, their cautions against venturing too deep into those tangled woods alone. My name is Elias. Until a fortnight ago, I was merely another soul hollowed out by fluorescent lights and spreadsheets, yearning for an untamed horizon. When I carved out a week for myself, seeking refuge in the vast, undulating green of the ancient mountains, I anticipated nuisances no greater than whining mosquitoes or perhaps the lumbering curiosity of a black bear. The reality proved monstrously divergent. The first brace of days unfolded as prescribed. Serene traverses through sun-dappled forests breathing pine and damp earth, tranquil evenings serenaded by the crackle of my campfire, nights adrift beneath a velvet expanse pricked with starlight. This fragile peace shattered on the third day. I was navigating a trail less trodden, absorbed in the profound quietude, when the first discordant note struck, the unmistakable sensation of being observed. A primitive prickle crawl in the nape of my neck, the involuntary salute of hairs along my forearms. Thus it commenced. I attempted to dismiss it, attributing the unease to solitude's phantom limb, an imagination overstimulated by isolation. Yet, as the hours bled towards dusk, the feeling intensified, clung like humidity. Fleeting shimmers of movement teased the edges of my vision. A swift turn revealed only impassive trees. Dry leaves crackled underfoot somewhere behind me. A spin on my heel found the woods utterly still, unnervingly mute. Disquiet curdled within me. By the time I established camp that evening, my nerves were taut wires humming with anxiety. I built the fire high, a defiant bastion of flame against the encroaching gloom, hoping its light and heat might ward off whatever lurked just beyond its reach. As I sat, mesmerized by the dancing orange tongues, striving to leash my frantic thoughts, I heard it. A voice slicing through the twilight hush from the dense woods. "Hello, anyone out there?" I went rigid, my heart slamming against my ribs like a trapped bird. The voice possessed a human timbre, yet something felt fundamentally wrong. It was too crisp, too enunciated, like dialogue delivered from a page rather than a genuine plea lost in the wilderness. "I'm lost," the voice insisted, closer now yet directionless. "Can you help me?" Every fiber of my being shrieked caution, screamed against betraying my location. But the insidious seed of doubt took root. What if it was someone truly stranded? Could I shoulder the guilt of ignoring a desperate call? "Hello?" I answered, my own voice betraying a tremor. "Whereabouts are you?" A pregnant pause hung in the air, broken only by the fire's hiss. Then the voice returned, impossibly, from a completely different point in the encircling darkness. "This way. Please, I need assistance." Ice water sluiced down my spine. The speed, the silence of that movement, utterly unnatural. Scrambling to my feet, I swept the beam of my flashlight across the Stygian void surrounding my small haven. The light carved cones through the blackness, illuminating skeletal trees and tangled undergrowth, but revealed no human form. "Where are you?" I shouted again, desperation fraying the edges of my voice. "I don't see you." And then came the sound that shattered my remaining composure. A low, throaty rumble that resonated with a primal wrongness, unequivocally inhuman. It was punctuated by the sharp retort of snapping branches, the frantic rustle of disturbed leaves. Something substantial, something fast, was forcing its way through the forest directly towards me. I didn't linger for introductions. Snatching my pack, I bolted, the frantic drumming in my ears drowning out all else. I plunged through the underbrush, unseen branches lashing my face, fleeing blindly into the suffocating night. Behind me, I could hear it, the relentless pursuit, impossibly swift for whatever bulk crashed through the foliage. Then, chilling me to the marrow, the voice sounded again, using my recent words, my inflection. "Wait," it called, a grotesque echo of my own plea moments earlier. "Where are you? I don't see you." Panic lent wings to my exhausted limbs. I ran harder, faster. This thing, whatever nightmare it was, collected voices. It had baited its trap with a fabricated cry for help, and now it wielded my own fear against me. Time dissolved into a blur of ragged breaths and stumbling flight through the endless dark. The entity always just behind, its calls a terrifying medley of tones, now pleading, now enraged, a constant, horrifying chorus. Just as my lungs burned with acidic fire and my legs threatened to buckle, a point of light pierced the oppressive black. Hope, fierce and unexpected, surged through me, igniting a final reservoir of strength. I burst from the tree line onto the blessed asphalt of a road, nearly collapsing in delirious relief at the sight of a gas station's fluorescent glow, perhaps a quarter-mile distant. A backward glance, compelled by terror, found only the impenetrable wall of the forest, silent and dark, offering no sign of my pursuer. I stumbled towards the station, a ragged apparition in torn clothes, eyes wide with frantic terror. The attendant, a man whose face seemed etched with the weariness of long nights, took one look at my state, and his hand moved instinctively towards the phone. "No, please," I choked out, struggling for air. "Help me. Something in the woods. It's not natural." His hand hovered. He regarded me with a long, searching gaze, then emitted a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of years. "You went up into Echo Ridge, didn't you?" he asked, the question devoid of surprise. I could only nod, bewildered by his calm acceptance. He slowly shook his head. "Folks get told. We try to warn 'em. Them woods, they ain't right. Got things in 'em older than the hills." Over the subsequent hour, as the adrenaline subsided and my heart ceased its frantic hammering, the attendant, Gus, he called himself, shared stories. Tales whispered across generations of hikers and hunters experiencing encounters unnervingly similar to mine, of a presence that could steal sounds, mimic voices, even those of loved ones, to lure the unwary deeper into its domain. "Some name it a mimic," Gus said, his voice low. "Others figure it's something more ancient, something that was rooted here long before our kind, and will be here long after we're dust. All I know for certain is them that go searching for it in Echo Ridge. They don't often find their way back." I remained within the sanctuary of the gas station until dawn painted the sky, too deeply unnerved to venture out. Even when the morning sun finally emboldened me to retrieve my car from the trailhead, a part of me braced to find the entity waiting beside it. But there was nothing, only my vehicle sitting undisturbed exactly as I had left it days, lifetimes ago. The drive home was a fugue state, my mind desperately grasping for rational explanations. Shared psychosis? The potent brew of isolation and local folklore? An overwrought imagination painting monsters onto the canvas of an unfamiliar forest? Yet, beneath the frantic rationalizations, a cold certainty resided. What I had faced in those woods was terrifyingly real, an entity far more dreadful than any predator of flesh and bone. A week has passed since my return. The sensation of being watched clings to me like a shroud. Sometimes, in the deepest hours of the night, I fancy I hear them, whispers skittering just beyond my window pane, fragmented phrases, phantom cries for help, the chilling echo of my own voice calling out from the darkness. I've begun to scour the shadowed corners of the internet, seeking answers, validation. It teems with accounts mirroring my own, narratives of wanderers stalked by an uncanny mimic. Theories abound: elusive cryptid, interdimensional interloper. Yet no definitive truth emerges, only shared terror and the unsettling enigma of its motives. One truth, however, has branded itself onto my soul. I will never again seek solitude in the wild alone. The quietude I once yearned for now feels suffocating, pregnant with unseen menace, and every unexpected noise, every time my name is called unexpectedly, a sliver of ice pierces my heart. Is it truly them? Or is it the thing from Echo Ridge, its hunt unending, seeking still to draw me back into its shadowed realm? I possess no answers, only a constellation of questions and a persistent, bone-deep dread. But this I know. Shadows conceal truths far stranger and more terrifying than we dare imagine. And sometimes, venturing into the wilderness to find yourself, you discover instead that you are profoundly, terrifyingly not alone. So, should you ever find yourself deep in the trackless woods and hear a voice crying out from the trees, hesitate. Consider deeply before you answer. It might not be a soul in need. It might be something else entirely. Something ancient, patient, and ravenous, eager to add your voice to its ghastly collection. And once it possesses your sound, who can say what horrors it might speak? The percussion began my very first night. The key had barely turned in the lock of my new residence, my duffel bag slumped near the threshold, weary boots kicked aside when a resonant thump, thump, thump pulsed from overhead, like iron-shod heels pacing relentlessly. My initial thought, the upstairs occupant, evaporated as I recalled the agent's assurance. Top floor. None resided above apartment 501. A shrug dismissed it. Perhaps the groaning sighs of antiquated plumbing or wind buffeting the aged structure. Decrepitude was etched into its very bones, ceilings fissured like dry riverbeds, paint peeling in brittle flakes. Investigation held no appeal. I sank onto the pre-owned sofa, flicked on the television, seeking solace in its flickering light. But the thrumming persisted, now interwoven with a muffled cadence, the ghost of music throbbing through plaster. A party held captive behind a wall. I nudged the TV volume higher, a futile shield. The dull bass beat vibrated in my teeth, unsettling something deep within my gut. Dawn found me bleary, surfacing from a restless slumber. That spectral revelry, or whatever phantom disturbance it was, had drummed on until exhaustion finally claimed me near midnight. My shift commenced at 8 sharp, necessitating a hasty shower and departure. Descending the worn staircase, I encountered another tenant, a woman of middle years retrieving mail from lobby boxes. A polite inclination of her head met my introduction. "Elira," she offered. Tentatively, I inquired about nocturnal oddities. Her gaze lingered a moment. "You're in 501, aren't you?" Upon my nod, she paused, choosing words carefully. "Yes, things get heard up there now and then. Not much, I can tell you. It's an old place." A sentence seemed to hover on her lips, unvoiced. My attempt at a follow-up met only a slight, dismissive shrug before she turned and walked away. Work beckoned, curiosity warring with practicality. I resolved to dismiss it. Overwrought imagination, perhaps, or the wind's lonely song across the rooftop expanse. The day promised demanding hours. Spectral sounds were an unwelcome distraction. Yet, clocking out, a knot tightened in my stomach. Fatigue gnawed, craving profound sleep. A silent homecoming was my fervent hope. That evening, the ancient lift cage sulked, defunct again, forcing a climb up the echoing concrete stairs. The building felt dimmer, half the corridor sconces sputtering fitfully. Reaching my door, I hesitated. A low thud resonated from above. The sound of weighty furniture shifted. An abrupt chill prickled my skin despite the corridor's stuffy warmth. Inside, doors secured, I battled for composure. A microwaved burrito constituted dinner, consumed quickly before settling onto the sofa, television dark. I listened. Inevitably, indistinct voices drifted down, punctuated by the faint chime of glass on glass. Phantom toasts, spectral cheers. My palms grew slick, my stomach constricting. Dragging a kitchen chair to the living room wall, I ascended cautiously, pressing my ear to the ceiling. The paint exhaled a musty scent, laced with a faint phantom aroma of char. The voices persisted, an unintelligible murmur, punctuated by sporadic bursts of laughter, sharp, staccato, abruptly curtailed. Descending, unease coiled tighter. My heart hammered, my mouth felt arid. Old pipes, I insisted silently, some bizarre acoustic phenomenon, but conviction eluded me. After another night fractured by the unseen disturbance, resolve hardened. I would inspect the rooftop, perhaps a forgotten attic space, a clandestine nook commandeered for illicit gatherings. Saturday morning dawned gray. Sneakers laced, I navigated towards the narrow stairwell tucked away at the hall's terminus. Roof access, authorized personnel only, a faded sign declared. I ignored it. The door groaned open on protestant hinges, releasing a gust of cold air. The roof presented a stark, empty tableau, a flat expanse dotted with ventilation units, derelict chairs slumped like skeletal remains, and a Jackson Pollock of bird droppings under a low, brooding sky. Grimy walls bore the scrawls of graffiti. I paced slowly, attuned for any hint of life. Only the wind's keen whistle answered. Tapping my foot yielded nothing but solid thuds. No hidden hatches, no hollow spaces. 10 minutes yielded only frustration and a quickening pulse. Defeated, I turned back. Emerging into the hallway, a presence made me start. Ilara stood there, watching, concern etched on her face. "Were you on the roof?" she inquired, her eyes sharp. I admitted my quest, explaining the unsettling symphony from above, the search for its source. Her expression softened fractionally. Leaning closer, her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "This building, it used to have 6 floors. Fire took the top one, decades back. They tore down what was left, but some say the party never stopped." A jolt, sharp and cold, shot through my chest. Had she heard them? A slow nod confirmed it. Sometimes, late, you can hear it, laughing, glasses, music, like an old record stuck on repeat. She scratched absently at her arm, glancing down the dim corridor as if wary of eavesdroppers. "Look, I don't know if you go in for that kind of thing, but believe me, you're not the first. Lived here 15 years. Every new tenant in 501 either bolts after a few months, or they just learn to live with it." I swallowed, the effort thickened my throat. Sweat gathered at my nape. Her tone held no malice, only the weary weight of fact, not a scare tactic, but a statement of unsettling reality. Murmuring thanks, I retreated into my apartment, the key trembling in my grasp. The scent of dust and aged wood seemed suddenly more potent. Sinking onto the sofa, I stared fixedly at the ceiling. Silence reigned for now, but I knew with chilling certainty the revelry would recommence. Over the ensuing week, the sounds became an intermittent torment. Sometimes a barely audible susurrus of conversation, fading in and out like a faulty transmission. Other nights, a full-blown sonic illusion of festivity. The strangest element was its anachronistic quality. The music possessed a tinny, scratch-laden timbre, the voices echoing slightly, suggesting a grander space than my modest living room. Sleep deteriorated further. Tension headaches became my companions, born of perpetually clenched jaws. Each night, the first distant thump or spectral chuckle sent my muscles into rigid knots. One night, gripped by a desperate need for proof, I decided to record it. Phone poised, microphone aimed ceiling-ward, I sat in the encroaching darkness, waiting. Around 11, the familiar low pulse of music commenced. Record pressed, I held my breath, striving for stillness. My own heartbeat felt thunderous, a frantic counterpoint in my chest. Laughter seemed to skitter across the plaster above, a mobile, mirthless sound. After several minutes, I stopped the recording. Playback yielded only a frustrating hiss of static, a faint, ambient hum utterly devoid of the sound so clearly perceived moments before. My hands began to shake more violently. It felt profoundly wrong, the sound existing yet refusing capture, tangible only to my own senses. Frustration surged, culminating in a slammed fist against the coffee table, the echo mocking my impotence. Isolation settled heavily. Who would believe this? The police? The landlord? I possessed no evidence, only my own frayed nerves. The pressure built nightly, eroding my patience. Nearly 2 weeks later, I approached Alara again, inquiring about records of the fire, old news clippings perhaps. A shrug. Not my sort of thing to keep track of. Maybe the fellow in 203? Mr. Silas? He's been here forever. A knock on 203 summoned an elderly gentleman. His sister, the actual tenant, was out. Politely, I broached the subject of the building's history. He invited me in briefly. We stood amidst the comfort and aroma of old paper and brewed coffee. He confirmed the fire. Late 50s, the exact year escaped him. The entire 6th floor gutted by faulty wiring, he recalled. The owners opted against rebuilding, capping the structure at 5 stories. Casualties? He didn't mention any. Had he ever heard anything unusual? A pause, then a long, considering look. Yes, he admitted quietly. I have, but I keep myself to myself. Rent's fair, and I don't court trouble. Back in my apartment, I stood by the window, watching the distant city lights glitter against the velvet night. A cool breeze whispered through the opening, but my mind refused to settle. A heaviness lodged in my chest, the notion of some residual echo, a psychic stain warred with my innate skepticism. Ghosts weren't my currency, yet the sounds were undeniably there, real enough to steal sleep and appetite. Some nights, sustenance was merely a glass of water before an early, hopeful retreat to bed, praying the phantom festivities wouldn't begin before oblivion claimed me. Then came a Saturday night when the volume surged. I was at my small dining table, idly flipping through a magazine, when the ceiling directly above erupted with a thump so violent it felt like a dropped crate. I jolted, nearly upsetting my chair. My heart hammered against my ribs, loud enough to pulse in my ears. Slowly, I rose. The cacophony continued. Muffled speech, the distinct clink of glassware, then a swell of jaunty, antique music, clearer this time as if emanating from a speaker directly overhead. I drifted to the center of the living room, head tilted back, staring upwards, breath held captive. My throat felt like sandpaper. Each inhalation was shallow, tremulous. From a kitchen drawer, I retrieved a flashlight. Despite the previous fruitless search, an undeniable compulsion seized me. Check again. Now. Perhaps this time I'd catch them. My legs felt unsteady, but adrenaline propelled me out into the hallway, silent save for the low buzz of a fluorescent tube. I made for the familiar metal door. Roof access. My hand quaked as I grasped the knob, turning it slowly. It creaked open, exhaling a blast of cool night air. I stepped out onto the roof. The city skyline blazed, a vibrant panorama below, but up here, the wind howled, tugging at my clothes, forcing me to brace myself. Flashlight beam activated, I swept it across the desolate space. Broken chairs, scattered debris, puddles gleaming near a drain pipe. No music, no voices, no party. I advanced towards the center, navigating around vents and protrusions, the flashlight beam dancing nervously on the chipped concrete. Reaching the area directly above my apartment, I stopped, listened intently. Nothing. Not a single note, not a whisper of laughter, not the faintest clink. Only the raw, scouring wind. My heart raced, breath coming in ragged gasps. I scanned the perimeter again, half expecting a hidden panel, a secret stairwell. Nothing. My foot stomped down, a dull, solid impact. No hollow spaces, no concealed chambers. For a long moment, I stood motionless, buffeted by the wind, feeling utterly foolish. Then, turning, I headed back down. Re-entering my apartment, I found silence. The rooms were quiet, save for the refrigerator's low hum. Exhaustion washed over me as I collapsed onto the sofa. My muscles ached, my head throbbed in time with my pulse. There was no rational explanation. Leaving wasn't feasible. The lease was binding. Funds for a new deposit non-existent. Besides, the convenience of walking to work anchored me here, trapped. In the weeks that followed, a strange equilibrium established itself. The noises remained, an erratic companion manifesting every few nights. Sometimes I'd wake abruptly at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, startled by a phantom guffaw from above. Other times, I'd sit at my table, passively awaiting the inevitable thumps. I experimented with headphones, blasting white noise or podcasts into my ears at bedtime. It offered a partial shield, though the low vibrations still seemed to permeate the plaster. Each occurrence triggered the familiar cascade. Frayed nerves, racing heart. I ceased questioning Alara. She'd shared all she knew or dared to. Mr. Silas remained politely reticent. Contacting authorities felt futile. They'd find nothing, dismiss me. The landlord, I sensed, would offer only indifference. So, gradually, I began to tune it out, or rather, to absorb it into the fabric of my life here. Some nights, I could almost persuade myself it was merely the building settling, the eccentric acoustics of age. But deep down, a colder certainty resided. The source remained elusive, the phantom party unexplained. All I knew was the clinking glass, the distant, indistinct chatter, the scratchy, ethereal music. They persisted. Even now, returning late, that faint preliminary thump sometimes greets me before my key even finds the lock. My heart quickens, the familiar tendrils of dread tightening around me. It's as if the sixth floor still exists in some parallel dimension, hosting its interminable spectral soiree. I endure. I haven't fled. I tell myself it's just echoes, atmospheric residue, phenomena beyond my grasp. So far, I remain, navigating the tense nights, the hollow ache in my chest whenever the muffled celebrations commence. It isn't peace, but it is my reality. And every night drifts away on the unanswered question, will the party upstairs ever truly end? The key turned stiffly in the lock of my city studio, a final, gritty farewell against the flaking enamel of the handle. I didn't look back. Ahead lay the cramped interior of my sedan, stuffed with luggage, trailed by the hulking shadow of a rented truck laden with boxes, the sum total of a life I was determined to shed. Weariness settled deep in my bones, laced with a thrumming undercurrent of anxiety. The plan: escape the relentless urban thrum, find a pocket of stillness, begin anew. A month prior, a listing materialized, a forgotten warehouse slumbering in a hamlet miles from any arterial road. The price whispered of neglect, attracting no other suitors. One hurried visit sealed the deal. My vision, a haven for antiques, the culmination of years spent trafficking in remnants and oddities, a trade that resonated with my own fragmented history. Its facade wept paint, the roofline canted like a broken spine, and the air inside hung thick with the scent of decayed timber and damp earth. Yet it felt right. A foundation, however unsteady, for something else. Rolling into the village was like slipping beneath the surface of slow water. The main street, narrow and hushed, held a few figures perched on benches, their conversations murmured low. Time seemed to pool here, unhurried. I eased the car to a halt before my acquisition, the warehouse, and simply sat, the engine ticking cool, listening to the breeze sift through unseen leaves. It looked older, more skeletal than memory served. Above the entrance, the ghost sign for Mercer's Provisions hung askew, a forgotten nameplate. Dust filmed the windows like cataracts. Porch boards crumbled under the weight of seasons. A mountain of work, certainly, but that wasn't the fear. The fear gnawed at the integrity of the structure itself, the potential abyss for my meager savings. Still, I unfolded myself from the car, stretching limbs tight from the drive. Across the way, a neighbor offered a tentative wave. Amiable enough, yet a coolness prickled the air, unrelated to the gentle weather. The warehouse door groaned open, releasing a sigh of stale air. My boots disturbed decades of settled dust, sending motes swirling in the weak shafts of light piercing the gloom. Shelving lined the walls, spectral remnants of its general store past. Counters bore the palimpsests of old receipts, faded advertisements clinging like memories. The smell intensified, damp paper forgotten in shadowed corners. Towards the rear, I found a cramped office, its single window choked by an overgrown backyard. And there, stark against the ceiling plaster above a scarred wooden desk, a trap door. Why hadn't I registered it before? Rising on my toes, broom handle extended, I prodded its surface. A faint rattle, but it held fast. Later, I decided. The remainder of the afternoon dissolved in the rhythm of unloading, carving out a Spartan living space in one corner. A cot, a folding table. Muscles screamed from the exertion. Day done. Sleep on that narrow cot proved elusive. The building possessed a profound silence, alien after the city's perpetual hum. No passing vehicles, no distant sirens. Initially a balm, the quiet soon bred its own occupants. Little ticks and sighs emerged from the old wood. Then, near midnight, something else intruded, a soft, dragging sound from directly overhead, like footsteps muffled by dust, yet uneven, hesitant, possessing a peculiar limp. Back and forth it paced. Pauses punctuated the rhythm, followed by what might have been a stifled, guttural growl. My heart began a frantic tattoo against my ribs. A cold knot tightened in my gut. A raccoon, I insisted silently. Some nocturnal scavenger seeking shelter. But the cadence felt wrong. Too slow, too deliberate, too heavy for anything small and skittering. I lay rigid in the darkness, clutching the thin blanket, breath catching in my throat. Minutes stretched taut, then the sounds ebbed away. Sleep remained distant, my throat parched, brow slick with cold sweat. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me. Morning light brought feeble rationalizations. A dream, surely, magnified by fatigue and unfamiliar surroundings. Pulling on boots, I resolved to inspect the trap door. Lacking a ladder, I constructed a precarious ziggurat of crates. Pushing upwards met resistance. Something held it fast from the other side. A crowbar provided the necessary leverage. Grunting with effort, I forced it, the wood groaning in protest until the door finally yielded with a dusty sigh. I angled my flashlight beam into the darkness, then hauled myself through the opening. The attic was a cramped, wedge-shaped space beneath the pitched roof, rafters crisscrossing like ancient bones overhead. Dust hung thick, tickling my nostrils. A single grimy window at the far end admitted a wan, spectral light. Crates huddled in corners, trunks lay like sleeping beasts, cobwebs draped everything in funereal lace. The floorboards protested beneath my weight. Then the smell hit me. Foul, visceral, like meat left too long in the sun. A hand flew to my nose, bile rising. A few feet away, the wall bore witness. Scratch marks, deep, ragged gouges clawed into the wood, unevenly spaced, parallel. My chest constricted. The flashlight beam trembled across the violation. Nothing natural made marks like these. The stench intensified near this desecrated wall. I recoiled, a shudder tracing my spine, my breath suddenly shallow and shaky. Scanning the cramped space, I saw more gouges near the opposite corner. A sudden rattle erupted from behind a stack of crates. I froze, flashlight clutched like a talisman, every nerve screaming. Nothing moved. My pulse thundered, a deafening drum in the close air. A whispered curse escaped my lips. I remained motionless, straining to hear anything over the blood rushing in my ears. Silence answered. Turning carefully, I retreated to the opening, scrambled down, and slammed the trap door shut. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. Ghosts? Monsters? Such notions had always belonged to fiction, yet something resided up there. A large animal, perhaps? Diseased? Feral? Cornered? The smell alone spoke of decay, of something rotting. Animal control seemed the logical step, but this village existed outside such convenient registries. Inquiries among the locals yielded only shrugs. One suggested Silas, a handyman known to occasionally handle vermin. His number joined the scant entries in my notebook. That afternoon, I forced myself to work, wrestling dusty shelves in the main room, clearing debris, attempting to stage a nascent display of my wares. Anything to occupy the mind. But my gaze kept straying towards the office, towards the ceiling, a knot of dread tightening with each glance. On impulse, I wedged a chair against the office door, then propped another beneath the trapdoor itself, a laughably flimsy barricade. The absurdity didn't stop my hands from feeling clammy. Every creak of the floorboard sent me spinning around, heart leaping. Evening found me depleted. Canned soup heated on a camping stove, eaten hunched over the folding table. Darkness pressed in from the cavernous reaches of the warehouse. My phone offered little solace, the signal sporadic, weak. Around 11, I surrendered to the cot, switching off the main bulb, leaving only the small lamp casting a sickly orange glow over my makeshift corner amidst the unpacked boxes. My mind churned. Eventually, eyes closed. Then, the sound, the scraping, overhead. Slow, laborious, like immense weight being dragged across the floorboards. My heart hammered. Breath came in short, sharp gasps. I sat bolt upright, snatching the lamp. Investigation felt impossible. I could only listen, paralyzed. The dragging paused. A low, guttural sound followed, visceral, raising gooseflesh along my arms. A cold sweat broke out. A shiver traced my spine. Shout? The thought died, strangled by the fear of what might answer. Animal? Human derelict? The building stood empty for years, but those gouges, not human fingernails. The image burned behind my eyelids. My stomach roiled. Sweat beaded despite the chill air. A soft thud echoed from above, then profound silence. I lay back, staring sightlessly at the ceiling, tension coiling in every muscle. Sleep came in brief, troubled snatches, punctuated by jolts at every settling groan of the old structure. Dawn arrived gray and unwelcome. Muscles ached, head throbbed. First priority, Silas. He answered, gruff but accommodating, yet couldn't come until the weekend. 4 days. Frustration warred with rising panic. No other options presented themselves. The intervening days became a blur of sorting dusty inventory, scrubbing shelves, a forced attempt at normalcy punctuated by sporadic scuffles from above. Daytime noises were muted. A soft bump, a distant scrape, unsettling but lacking the nocturnal intensity. I gleaned fragments of the building's history from a few taciturn locals. An elderly man recalled the Mercers, the family who ran the general store. Odd folk, he offered vaguely, kept strange hours, shuttered the place unpredictably, vanished years ago. No one took over. The roof, the decay, deterred buyers. Strange noises? He chuckled. Old places always groan. His dismissal offered no comfort. The memory of those claw marks festered. On the third night, a new tactic. A small tape recorder placed near the office door, a desperate bid for tangible evidence. Flashlight rested on the table, a cold weight ready in my hand. Midnight brought the familiar dragon, chest tight, breath shallow, slower this time perhaps, circling, then the scraping distinct like nails or claws on bare wood. Hands shaken, I rose, crept towards the office, stood directly beneath the trap door, flashlight beam aimed upward like a weapon. The sound ceased. I waited, knees trembling, stomach churning. That foul miasma, thick and cloying, drifted down. The same putrid signature from the attic. Gagging, I stumbled back, covering my nose. A loud thump resonated from above, jarring me. I nearly dropped the light. Muttering incoherently, I retreated to the cot, heart hammering against my ribs. Wide-eyed, I waited for the sequel. It never came. Sleep finally offered a few hours of troubled oblivion near dawn. The next morning, I rewound the tape. The recording crackled, thick with static, but through it emerged a definite, low growl and the undeniable rasp of scraping. My pulse leaped. Not a raccoon, not precisely. Deeper, rougher. My mouth went dry, palms slick with sweat. I saved the recording. Proof, perhaps, for Silas. If he believed, maybe we could face it together. The thought of ascending those crates alone was intolerable. Silas finally arrived, a stocky man, beard thick as moss, possessing a quiet solidity. My explanation, however, earned a deepening frown. He agreed to look. I stood back as he scaled the crates, eased open the trap door. He sniffed the air, his face visibly twitching at the stench. Flicking on a powerful work light, he hoisted himself into the gloom. Below, I waited, suspended between relief and mountain dread. Slow footfalls overhead, a grunt. He called down, confirming the claw marks. Too large, he agreed, for any typical vermin. More poking around. A muffled curse. He described a crude nest in the corner. Torn fabric, sticks, debris. Mentioned something slimy, coating the floor nearby, refusing specifics. The overpowering odor forced his retreat after only a few minutes. Heavy-duty traps, he offered, but admitted uncertainty. This wasn't standard pest control. He suggested specialists, someone equipped for something else. I paid him, watched his truck disappear down the quiet street, the silence settling back, heavier than before, utterly alone. That night, I sat in the main room, staring out at the deserted street, the darkness absolute. Helplessness curdled into a stubborn resolve. Drive it out, seal the attic, but how? Against what? No firearm, only the rust-pitted crowbar leaning nearby. I ended up with my back pressed against the cold plaster wall, crowbar resting across my knees, flashlight beam cutting a nervous swathe through the shadows. When the dragging commenced, I went rigid, breath hitched, fingers tightened on cold iron. The steps traversed the space above. The growling followed a low rumble escalating in volume. Heart pounded. The lamp on my folding table vibrated with the tremor in my hand. The air felt perceptibly colder. Neck muscles seized. Yell? Provoke it? I sat for what felt like hours, muscles screaming, eyelids leaden weights. Around 4, silence fell once more. My shirt clung, soaked in sweat. A bitter taste coated my tongue. I crawled to the cot and collapsed, nausea rising from sheer exhaustion and unrelenting stress. Waking near noon felt like surfacing from deep water. Forced down some dry cereal, paced the echoing space, nerves frayed thin, stared at the useless phone. Who would believe this tale? A creature in the attic? Just an animal, they'd insist. But animals didn't exude that charnel stench. Animals didn't move with that deliberate, heavy gait. Weeks have bled together now. The antique shop remains a collection of dusty potential. Focus fractures, dissipates. Every nightfall brings a renewed bracing, a listening vigilance for the steps, the growls. It's not just an animal. Silas's hasty retreat confirmed that unspoken truth. How to evict it. Fleeing means financial ruin, abandoning the fragile hope this place represented. Yet a morbid, insistent curiosity gnaws, the need to know. I'm trapped in a silent standoff. It hasn't descended. I haven't ascended again. but nightly the sounds persist, perhaps subtly louder. The smell deepens, seeping through floorboards, tainting the very air I breathe. I write this now at the folding table, a futile attempt to impose order on chaos. Midnight has passed. The odor of decay drifts from the office, thick enough to taste. My hands tremble intermittently. I keep wiping sweat from my brow. Outside, the village sleeps, oblivious. No one would hear. Those deep gouges flash in my mind's eye. Territorial markings, a warning. Part of me screams to grab the light, climb, confront the unknown. But imagining that beam finding movement in the far corner, illuminating some shadowed form, triggers a primal, paralyzing dread. My heart races at the mere thought. Courage fails me. I hear it now, dragging across the attic floorboards, louder tonight. The timbers groan under its passage. A ragged, guttural inhalation scrapes the silence. My pulse hammers in my ears. Fingers feel distant, numb. My jaw aches from clenching. The scrape of claws on wood, directly overhead now, slow, measured, purposeful. Its intent remains opaque. Its reasons for being here, unknowable. I only know it will not leave willingly. The thought of forcing the issue twists my insides. What happens then? How much longer can this fragile truce hold? Stuck in this decaying shell, sharing space with something ancient and wrong, I fear the stalemate is rapidly approaching its end. It wasn't their presence that first snagged my attention, deep within the park's untamed heart, but the light in their eyes. A feral piety burned there, unsettlingly bright, a shared conviction that prickled the skin along my arms. I, Silas, warden of these woods for 15 seasons, had seen my share of peculiar pilgrims seeking solitude, but this congregation moved with an unnerving, almost liturgical grace, their steps fallen in a rhythm dictated by some unheard cadence. My discovery of their secluded enclave, I sensed even then, was no mere trespass. It was the prelude to a descent, a plunge into depths that would scour my resolve and fray the very edges of my mind. Just another ember-streaked dusk bleeding across the peaks, the kind of sky that usually settled the soul after a long day's circuit. Familiar territory, this western ridge. Terrain I could navigate blindfolded after more than a decade tending its secrets. Yet, pushing through a thicket where shadows pooled like ink, my boot scuffed against the unfamiliar. The faint indentation of a path, deliberately obscured, absent from every survey map I carried. A whisper of wrongness. Prudence argued for retreat, but a deeper, more insistent curiosity pulled me forward, tugging me off the known chart into the forest's deeper murmurings. The phantom track solidified beneath my feet, winding further into the wilderness's embrace. Then came the sounds, discordant notes in the symphony of the wild, muttered chants punctuated by the sharp ring of steel on steel, the low thrum of some unseen generator, invasive, profane noises this far from civilization's reach. Caution became my cloak. I ghosted between ancient trunks until the trees abruptly parted, unveiling a scene that stole the air from my lungs, a scar upon the landscape, yet cleverly sutured into the folds of the earth. A settlement. Ramshackle structures, cobbled from scrap and timber, clustered within a natural amphitheater. Figures moved between them, their motions efficient, almost martial. Tending crops, yes, but also calibrating sights on rifles. my breath hitched. I melted behind the girth of a colossal pine, pulse hammering against my ribs. This was no simple hermitage. From the largest, most central edifice, a figure emerged, commanding the clearing's attention. Tall, gaunt, yet radiating an undeniable force, his beard a tangled cascade, his eyes chips of glacial ice that seemed to pin you even from afar. This had to be their shepherd, Malachi. The others orbited him, their postures radiating deference, their faces upturned like supplicants awaiting revelation. Though their words remained indistinct murmurs on the breeze, the taut energy crackling between them. The coiled readiness in their stances spoke volumes. An electric disquiet hummed beneath their surface. Every instinct screamed retreat. Report this anomaly. Yet, a morbid magnetism held me fast, rooted by a blend of professional duty and primal fear. As twilight deepened into true night, bonfires erupted, painting the scene in flickering, hellish tones. The congregation drew close, faces illuminated from below. Malachi ascended a crude platform, his voice suddenly resonant, carrying across the clearing with hypnotic fervor. "Kin of the coming dawn," he proclaimed, arms outstretched. "The hour approaches. The rot festers beyond these sacred woods. Their towers crumble, their foundations crack. But we, the chosen remnant, shall endure. We shall cleanse and rebuild upon the ruins." The words, laced with apocalyptic certainty, were cold fist clenching around my heart. This was zealotry sharpened to a weapon's edge. I started my withdrawal, inching backward into the deeper gloom. Too slow, too careless. My heel found a brittle twig. Its snap fractured the night air like a rifle shot. Silence descended, absolute and terrifying. Then every face, every pair of those burning eyes swiveled towards my hiding place. A single word tore through the stillness. "Outsider." Panic ignited. I bolted, abandoning stealth, tearing through thorny clutches and tangled roots. Shouts erupted behind me, the thudding of boots closing distance. Adrenaline surged, honing 15 years of wilderness craft into pure instinct. I became a creature of the forest, using its labyrinthine paths, its whispering streams, its concealing darkness to weave an escape. Doubling back, masking my scent in water, plunging through dense laurel stands, every trick deployed. Eventually, the sounds of the hunt receded, leaving only the frantic pounding in my ears and the rasp of my own breath. Collapsed against the rough bark of an oak, mind churning, I faced the precipice. Report this? Risk disbelief, bureaucratic delays while this malignancy festered? Or return, delve deeper into the heart of the danger, armed only with observation? The latter courted disaster, felt like madness, yet the image of Malachi's eyes, the echo of his venomous prophecy insisted this fire could not be left untended. Reason warred with resolve and lost. I went back. For 3 days, I became a shadow clinging to the periphery of their world, employing every fieldcraft skill I possessed. From concealed vantage points, I watched their meticulous preparations unfold, a grim tableau that froze the marrow in my bones. Crates of ammunition appeared, caches of food grew, detailed maps of the surrounding valleys were studied with unnerving focus. They drilled with cold efficiency, simulating assaults, practicing silent takedowns. Most disturbing was the steady trickle of newcomers, often gaunt, lost-looking youths drawn into Malachi's orbit. I witnessed the transformation. Hours spent closeted with the leader, emerging hollow-eyed but alight with that same terrifying, unwavering fervor. On the third night, concealed beneath a dense canopy of rhododendron, listening to the low murmur of voices from Malachi's dwelling, the final pieces clicked into horrifying alignment. His voice, low and conspiratorial, drifted towards me, outlining the unthinkable. Phase 1, neutralize the Warden Station, he instructed his inner circle. Sever their eyes and ears, secure the park access, then the towns. Havenwood first, swiftly, before the slumbering world stirs. My blood turned to ice water. This wasn't paranoia. It was imminent, orchestrated violence. No more observation. Warning was paramount. I moved, desperate now, pushing through the darkness towards safety, towards a telephone line, towards sanity. But haste breeds error. A misstep, a rustle too loud near a known patrol route. A sharp cry split the night. Again, the chase was on, but this time felt different. Calculated. They weren't just pursuing, they were channeling me, using the terrain like beaters driving game, forcing me inexorably back towards the fire-lit clearing. I erupted from the tree line into the sudden glare of the compound, only to be met by a wall of bodies. Hands, like vices, seized me, wrenching my service weapon away, slamming me to my knees on the packed earth. Malachi emerged from the firelight, moving with predatory grace, his glacial eyes boring into mine. "Ah," he purred, a smile touching his lips but not his eyes. "Our tenacious warden graces us again. Your resourcefulness is noted." Spitting defiance, though fear coiled icy in my gut, I snarled, "They'll know I'm missing. They'll come." He let out a low, disconcerting laugh. "Indeed, they will. Providence delivers you, Warden Silas. You feature rather centrally in the next act." As rough hands hauled me towards one of the crude buildings, the devastating truth struck me. My attempt to expose them had only armed them further. I wasn't just a captive, I was leverage. Days bled together in a haze of confinement and dread. My world shrank to the 4 rough-hewn walls of my prison, punctuated by the impassive faces of my guards and the periodic visits of Malachi himself. He'd sit, weaving elaborate justifications for his crusade, painting visions of a corrupted world ripe for purification, seeking fertile ground for his poisonous ideology and my own weary cynicism. Yet, even in isolation, fragments of information filtered through, whispers overheard, glimpses of unfamiliar faces conferring with Malachi, hints of tendrils reaching into nearby settlements, even chillingly among those sworn to uphold the law. The operation was far more entrenched than I'd imagined. Escape became an obsession, a frantic calculation of risks and opportunities. But, lying awake each night, the sounds of their final preparations a constant thrumming reminder, the sharpening of blades, the loading of magazines, a sickening certainty grew. Had my stumbling upon this hidden cancer merely hastened its metastasis? This sanctuary, this wilderness I'd dedicated my life to protecting, was now poised to become a crucible of violence. And I, its steward, had somehow become the linchpin in its imminent violation. Plotting my way out, I knew escape was only the beginning. The forest's familiar dangers, the sudden storm, the unseen predator, paled before this darkness wearing human faces, poised to spill out and consume the unsuspecting world beyond the tree line. The wild had never felt so terrifyingly civilized. That night retains a distinct memory, a ponderous quality where the very air inside the Grand Arcadia Hotel seemed to coalesce, pressing thick against my ribs. I was merely Arthur Finch, a man on assignment, armed with an itinerary, a schedule, the neat architecture of a plan, futile defenses, all against the insidious creep of curiosity. The hotel's antiquated, cordoned-off wing had been a splinter in my mind since arrival, an entire corridor veiled by a velvet rope and a stark, no-entry placard. "Unsafe," the staff murmured. "Faulty wiring, treacherous floorboards." Their warnings acted only as kindling to the burgeoning fixation. By day, the Arcadia basked in borrowed glory. Sunlight streamed through towering Palladian windows in the lobby, igniting the polished mahogany banisters, illuminating the transient ballet of guests with rolling cases and portfolios. An ecosystem humming with purpose. Nightfall, however, conjured a different beast. Corridors stretched into elongated perspectives under the low, warm glow of infrequent lamps, exhaling a quietude that bordered on the unnerving. No overt specters haunted these passages, no disembodied whispers, yet an intangible disquietude permeated the shadowed stillness, settling deep beneath the skin. It was my second night, perhaps 10 o'clock, when I drifted past the forbidden wing again. The rope sagged, a sentinel grown weary. Beyond it, dust lay thick upon the carpet like fallen snow, undisturbed. The sign stood its silent, impotent guard. An impulse, sharp and sudden, seized me. Just a glimpse, I bargained with myself, a brief reconnaissance. My pulse drummed a frantic rhythm against the hotel's otherwise placid heartbeat. Only the distant thrum of the lobby's climate control disturbed the hush. No witnesses lurked in the dimness as I ducked beneath the rope, the forbidden plush yielding underfoot. Perspiration slicked my palms. My phone's torch lay dormant in my pocket. The corridor lights, though dim and prone to fits of stuttering luminescence, were inexplicably active. Here, the wallpaper peeled back in strips like sunburnt skin, revealing the aged plaster beneath. The air hung stale, thick with the ghosts of trapped decades. Abandonment was palpable. A few tentative steps forward, the floorboards groaning their protest beneath the carpet's muffling pile. Overhead, a dead bulb emitted a faint, persistent buzz. No trace of recent passage, human or otherwise. The dust remained inviolate. Doors lined the hall, their paint chipped, many adorned with faded, crooked signs proclaiming "Room under renovation." A backward glance, a flicker of rational thought urging retreat to the sterile comfort of my room, but some unseen tether held me fast. I pressed onward. My phone vibrated. A notification briefly illuminated the screen before it plunged into absolute darkness. Attempts to revive it were fruitless. A ghost of the home screen, then oblivion. Odd, considering its earlier charge, easily half full. Deeper, I walked, guided by the anemic, flickering corridor lamps. The stale miasma intensified, redolent of decaying upholstery and damp cardboard. A subtle pressure began to build at the base of my skull, the precursor to a tension headache. Work stress, perhaps? Or the stagnant air? It wasn't pain, merely a persistent, distracting throb. I passed more closed doors, their brass handles tarnished by time and neglect. One yielded not to my touch, locked fast, another the same. I continued, drawn inexorably towards a corner where the hallway veered sharply left. Around the bend, the gloom deepened. A constriction seized my chest, my breaths growing shallow. Just see what lies beyond. I promise the anxious flutter within, then withdraw. Peeking around the corner revealed not an end, but a continuation. A longer stretch of hallway, its lights flickering with a manic, inconsistent rhythm. The floor seemed to stretch into an impossible distance, an optical illusion that momentarily stole my bearings. My gaze locked onto that receding, vanishing point. And then, the first true wave of aberration washed over me. A peculiar vacancy blooming in my mind, a brief, unsettling lapse. The time? Forgotten. Had I secured my suitcase back in the room? A moment's frantic search through mental files yielded the answer. Closed, yes, but unlocked. The triviality of the detail, coupled with the effort needed to recall it, sparked genuine unease. My mouth felt parched, coated with dust. Drawing a ragged breath, I stepped fully into this new expanse. Above, a buzzing intensified, suggestive of frayed wiring. My own footsteps seemed unnaturally loud on the complaining boards. Panic, cold and sharp, pricked at my composure. I tried to conjure my room number, 312, or was it 412? Genuine concentration was required. No, definitely 312, I asserted, though a seed of doubt remained. Then, a more chilling test. My name. It sounds ludicrous, the hesitation, but it was there. Arthur. My lips moved, forming the syllables silently. Arthur Finch. The slight pause before confirmation sent a jolt of raw fear through me. A cold sweat beaded on my forehead. My hands began to tremble. Logic screamed retreat, a primal urge to flee back towards the known. Yet the enigma held me captive. This bizarre cognitive erosion demanded investigation, felt like an assault orchestrated by the very walls around me. A faint click echoed down the passage, the distinct sound of a door latch. I spun around, heart leaping. Nothing, only the silent, accusing doors, the epileptic lights, the shroud of dust. My stomach clenched. Hello? The word emerged thin, quavering. Silence answered. I grasped the nearest doorknob. Locked. The adjacent door, likewise. My heart hammered against my ribs. The imperative to escape surged, yet turning back, the corridor I'd traversed seemed altered, elongated, its lights dimmer still. I began walking briskly, the thudding of my pulse loud in my ears. Each footfall elicited a groan from the structure beneath. The hallway felt elastic, demanding more steps than I had taken to cover the same ground. A dull ache settled behind my eyes. Reaching the corner where the rope should have been, I found only another stretch of identical corridor, flanked by closed doors. Disorientation spiraled. Surely I should be back at the threshold. My temples throbbed. Calm, I commanded myself. Stay calm. Arthur Finch, business trip, room 308, 314. The number dissolved into meaningless digits. My mind felt scoured clean. Sweat trickled down my temples. My suit jacket felt suddenly constricting. I loosened my tie, gulping air. Where was a stairwell? An elevator? Anything? The lights overhead spasmed again, the hum rising in pitch. Pressure built in my ears, a physical manifestation of the encroaching wrongness. I swallowed, trying to clear them. Had I left my briefcase in the room? The memory slipped away like smoke. These small anchors to reality were detaching, one by one. I walked faster, bordering on a trot, rattling each doorknob fruitlessly. Locked, all locked. My breathing grew ragged, my legs unsteady. The flickering lights cast distorted, dancing shadows. A soft, scraping sound whispered from behind, something dragging against the wall. I whirled, nearly losing my balance. Empty. The corridor stretched back, silent and accusing. My throat felt impossibly tight. Forcing myself onward, I risked another glance back. The hallway seemed to have stretched further still. My watch read 10:15 p.m., yet an eternity seemed to have passed. The date? Elusive. My palms were damp canvases of sweat. The mental void yawned wider. My first name remained, a stubborn island, but my middle name, gone, utterly vanished, though I knew I possessed one. I pressed forward, squinting at the brass plaques on the doors. Coated in grime, the numbers were nearly illegible, rendered more so by the strobing lights. 308, 310, 312. They mocked me, worn and lifeless. None yielded. My breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. Muscles bunched, shoulders rigid, neck aching. The tie felt like a noose. I ripped it off, letting it fall to the carpet with a soft thud. A fleeting thought, retrieve it, was instantly overruled by the desperate need for forward momentum. The humming intensified. Tiny blue sparks now danced around several light fixtures. A momentary fear of fire surfaced, but the air held only that pervasive scent of stale decay. I scanned frantically for an exit sign, any deviation from the pattern. My heartbeat was a deafening drum. Another look over my shoulder. The corridor replicated itself infinitely in both directions, a hall of decaying mirrors. Vertigo washed over me. I braced a hand against the wall, the peeling paper rough beneath my trembling fingers. Closing my eyes, I fought to concentrate. Arthur Finch. Hotel. Business meeting tomorrow. With who? The client's name evaporated. My hand shook against the wall. A faint squeak cut through the oppressive silence. Eyes snapping open, I scanned the hallway. All doors remained shut, empty. My breathing hitched. I whispered my name again, clinging to it like a lifeline. Then, far down the corridor, a different light. Not the frantic flickering of the overhead lamps, but a steadier, warmer glow, seemingly emanating from an open doorway. Hope surged, propelling my exhausted legs forward. Closer, I saw the door was indeed slightly ajar. Its plaque was too corroded to decipher. Yellowish light spilled from the gap. Cautiously, I pushed the door inward and stepped across the threshold. The room exhaled dust and the scent of ancient upholstery. A single, naked bulb perched atop a side table cast a soft, flickering glow, a gentler pulse than the corridor's frantic strobing. A sagging couch rested against one wall opposite a scarred coffee table. No windows pierced the oppressive stillness. I pulled the door shut behind me, a small act of defiance against the endless hallway. The pressure in my head eased slightly, clarity returning in fragile fragments. I swiped at the sweat on my face with my jacket sleeve. The couch looked solid enough. I sank onto its musty cushions, elbows on knees. My phone remained stubbornly inert. The frantic panic subsided, replaced by a bone-deep weariness and a raw throat. I swallowed, tasting dust. Leaving the relative sanctuary of this room felt unthinkable. The hallway outside a predatory entity. So I remained, gathering the scattered pieces of myself. My last name. It surfaced after a moment's struggle. Finch, Arthur Finch. Saying it aloud anchored me. A small victory. The room number remained stubbornly elusive. 312? Maybe. Focus, I told myself. Don't let the corridor win. After minutes that felt like hours, resolve hardened. I had to find a way out. Cracking the door open, I peered into the hallway. The lights still flickered, but the corridor no longer seemed infinite. At the far end, near a corner, a small metal plaque gleamed faintly on the wall. A sign, perhaps stairs. Steeling myself, I stepped back into the oppressive passage. My legs felt like lead, every instinct screaming caution. I fixed my gaze on the sign, ignoring the creaks and whispers that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Maintenance stairwell. The adjacent door was unadorned metal, equipped with a push bar. I leaned into it. It resisted, then gave way with a tortured screech of rusted hinges. Beyond lay a narrow concrete stairwell, starkly lit by a single, steady bulb overhead. Neglected, yes, but blessedly free of flickering lights. I saw the bottom. Relief surged as I hurried down, gripping the cold metal railing. My breathing was rapid, but the crushing weight was lifting. At the base, another metal door. I shoved it open and stumbled out into the comparative brilliance of the main lobby area near the service offices. The lights were bright, steady. The carpet beneath my feet was clean. Turning, I saw the door I'd emerged from. Employees only. Maintenance access. I stood there, gasping, heart pounding, shirt clinging damply to my skin. A uniformed security guard approached, his expression shifting from impassivity to concern. "Everything all right, sir?" Explanations felt impossible, inadequate. "Got lost," I managed. He nodded slowly. "That area's off limits, sir. Not safe." He guided me towards the elevators. The ascent to my floor seemed suspended in time, yet the air felt breathable, clean. I chanted my name silently, a mantra against the encroaching void I'd barely escaped. Finally, the chime, the opening doors. Down the familiar, blessedly normal hallway, I saw my suitcase standing sentinel outside room 312. The key card slid home. The lock clicked green. A small sound, yet it resonated like a gunshot of deliverance. Inside, the lights were warm, steady. My suitcase sat open on the stand. My phone charger rested on the nightstand. Plugging in the phone, I watched the screen flare to life. Half battery. Exactly as it should be. A shaky sigh escaped me. I bolted the door, checked it twice, then stripped off the sweat-drenched suit. In the bathroom mirror, my reflection was a stranger. Pale, eyes wide and haunted. My mouth was desert dry, lips cracked. The corridor's insidious influence lingered. The ease with which my thoughts had unraveled, the shift in reality, the phantom pressure behind my eyes. It felt utterly unreal, yet the frantic cadence of my heart confirmed its truth. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the patterned carpet, forcing slow, deliberate breaths. The endless hallway, the stuttering lights, the locked doors, the sensation of being drawn deeper, the terrifying evaporation of memory. I pieced it together, shuddering. One final check outside my door confirmed the mundane reality of the third floor. The ice machine hummed reassuringly down the hall. No stale odor, bright paint. The suffocating presence was gone. Closing the door felt final. Sleep was a shallow, fitful thing that night, my mind refusing to relinquish the terror. But I did not leave the room. Morning arrived with a throbbing headache and profound exhaustion. Appearances had to be maintained for the business meeting. Downstairs, the staff offered polite greetings, though their eyes lingered on my pallor. I checked out that afternoon, a day earlier than planned, packing with frantic efficiency. I spoke to no one of the forbidden wing. Escape was the only imperative. Driving away, my eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror, irrationally expecting the long, flickering corridor to materialize behind me. Only the ordinary road stretched back. Eventually, the radio's drone provided a fragile anchor to the present. My mind remained clouded, bruised, but I was out. The memories returned, slotting back into place. Yet, even now, recalling that night induces a visceral clenching in my gut. It wasn't the specter of ghosts that terrified, but the dissolution of self, the horrifying ease with which my identity had begun to fray. No rational explanation presents itself. I only possess the chilling certainty of the experience, the conviction that I never wish to encounter its like again. The image of the hallway stretching into infinity, the near loss of my own name, my room number dissolving into static, these sensations remain, cold and sharp. Had I lingered longer in that decaying passage, I genuinely fear how much of Arthur Finch would have remained. That is why I fled. That is why I will never look back. My shift commenced under a starless sky, flashlight beams slicing the gloom, a disquiet coiled deep within me. Unease had taken root earlier, stemming from an anomalous edifice discovered at the property's furthest reach, an architectural anomaly absent from any historical blueprint. My supervisor, dismissive, had advised neglect, but the directive chafed. I am the sentinel of this place, its chronicler in deed if not word. Ignorance of any corner felt like a dereliction. While the principal avenues gleam under maintained illumination, their borders neatly manicured. A rearward sector succumbs to a tangle of venerable trees and treacherous earth. It was there this incongruous structure first snagged my eye. A stone sepulchre, ostensibly, yet its roof bore a subtle curvature, its portal possessing a gravity exceeding its peers. No mourner ever lingered near. No map acknowledged its existence. Fear is not my customary companion. Years spent amidst this historical necropolis have tempered me, immersed me in the rhythms of upkeep, sweeping flagstones, pruning encroaching flora, patrolling the perimeter against nocturnal intrusion, cataloging the slow decay time inflicts. Mostly, tranquility reigns, punctuated only by the cemetery's inherent eccentricities. The unprompted groan of ancient hinges, the furtive rustle in the undergrowth. Wind and wildlife are familiar architects of such sounds, rarely unsettling my composure. This stone enigma, however, disrupted the established cadence. The initial instance I navigated its periphery. A thread of sound snagged my attention, tightening the muscles along my spine. A radio, perhaps, drifting from a neighboring residence? No, the quality was too pristine, resonant like struck ivory. Flashlight extinguished, breath held captive in my chest. I strained to listen. The melody evaporated. A beat of silence, then the beam stabbed forth, illuminating the door. Locked. Its surface a tapestry of advanced corrosion. Squinting through a minuscule fissure near the lintel yielded nothing but impenetrable shadow. Perhaps auditory hallucination, I reasoned, dismissing it as I resumed my circuit. The following day found me burrowing into the cemetery's archives. Within the cramped office, abutting the main gate, amidst folders thick with age and handwritten ledgers, I sought mention of this maverick tomb. Chronicles of distinguished families, their designated crypts and mausoleums, surfaced readily, yet none matched the peculiar silhouette or its sequestered location. Records detailed expansions, renovations across decades, but the structure remained phantom. A persistent irritation bloomed, though I resisted hasty conjecture. A private vault, perhaps, lost to bureaucratic oversight. That evening, deliberately, I charted a course circumventing the area, the unease from the prior night clinging like damp air. The moon remained veiled, intensifying the darkness beneath the arboreal canopy. My flashlight's arc swept across leaning headstones nestled amongst the roots. Proximity, however, proved inescapable. As I drew near the anomalous structure, the piano music returned, this time amplified, distinct. A languid, deliberate melody unfolded, each note articulated with melancholic clarity. My pulse quickened. A slickness bloomed on my palms. My throat constricted. I fought for equilibrium, yet a betraying tremor agitated the hand gripping the light. I stood rooted, absorbing the sound. It flowed without flaw, seamless, suggesting long and intimate familiarity. Logic dictated vacancy, yet the music poured forth, irrefutable. Compelled, I approached the heavy door. Ear pressed against the cold stone, the piano's voice gained immediacy, as if I stood mere feet from the instrument itself. I tested the handle. Immovable, the lock felt ancient, absolute, a tentative rap on the stone surface. Abruptly, the music ceased. "Hello?" I called out, my voice thin in the stillness. "Is anyone present?" Only silence answered. A chill traced my nape, radiating across my shoulders. My gaze swept the surroundings. Was the source elsewhere? The night offered only the sigh of a low breeze. My phone, retrieved reflexively, displayed no signal bars. The impulse to summon aid died stillborn. A prickle of transgression surfaced, a sense that I trod forbidden ground. Retreat seemed the prudent course. I finished my patrol. Daylight rendered the structure mundane. Gray stone walls, a roof clad in weathered, chipped tiles, an eroded inscription near the apex, its legend lost to time. The door remained steadfastly locked. Circumnavigating the building revealed on the opposing flank a small window, fortified with iron bars. The glass behind was opaque with grime. Peering inside proved futile. Shining the flashlight through the bars at an awkward angle illuminated only deeper darkness. The thought of forcing the bars arose, then subsided. Lacking appropriate tools and authorization, I refrained from causing damage. That afternoon, a renewed assault on the archives. Deeper I delved, into storage boxes releasing the musty perfume of aged paper. I unearthed records dating back a century, handwritten accounts of interments, plot ownership, maintenance fees, yet nothing concerning the rogue crypt. On the cusp of surrender, a slender notebook, devoid of any label, tumbled from a precarious stack. Within, crude sketches mapped portions of the cemetery, likely aide's memoir for some long-departed groundskeeper. On the final leaf, a recognizable shape, the structure. Beside it, a hastily scrawled annotation, "Odd addition, unlisted." No date, no further context. A jolt went through me. Confirmation. Someone else had noted its irregularity. Evening rounds brought the music for a third encounter. The same unhurried, almost mesmerizing melody. This time, mere listening felt insufficient. Flashlight probing the door's perimeter, I searched for hidden mechanisms, vulnerabilities. The piano continued its lament, oblivious. My breath hitched, my chest felt banded. The notes possessed an impossible perfection. How? The building stood derelict, devoid of power, its apertures too narrow for a piano's passage. Frustration mounting, I pushed against the door with my shoulder. Solid, unyielding. An urge to breach it surged. My fist struck the stone, once, twice. Silence crashed down, absolute. My ears hummed. Then, from within, a distinct shuffling sound, like weight shifting on a wooden seat. I froze. "Who's there?" I whispered. Nothing. After a protracted moment, the music resumed, restarting the familiar refrain. Sweat slicked my palms. I wiped them absently on my trousers. Retreating slowly, every nerve ending alight, I felt an unease bordering on dread. Later, sleep offered no refuge, only a dream of the crypt. I stood inside, flashlight illuminating an upright piano draped in cloth. Atop it lay sheet music. My name, Elias, appeared scribbled in the margins. I awoke with a start, forehead damp. A dream, I insisted, yet its residue lingered through the morning. My next shift was dominated by thoughts of the crypt. A decision formed. I would gain entry. Tucked into my tool bag, alongside wrenches and drivers, rested a crowbar. Near midnight, under the profound quiet of the sleeping grounds, I made directly for the structure. The music anticipated my arrival, the familiar slow theme drifting through the trees. My heart hammered against my ribs. Perspiration traced paths down my back. My throat felt raw. The crowbar felt heavy, purposeful in my grip. Reaching the door, I set the flashlight on the ground, its beam angled upwards. The tool's tip found purchase between door and frame. I heaved. Metal shrieked protest. Muscles screamed under the strain, my arm vibrating. Inside, the piano played on, tempo unwavering. Another, fiercer pull. A sharp crack echoed, the old lock yielding, followed by an abrupt, profound silence. The piano stopped. Breath held, I nudged the door inward, sweeping the flashlight's beam across the threshold. The air hung thick, stagnant, the scent of decades undisturbed. Dust motes swirled like phantom dancers in the invasive light. My nostrils tingled. Stone walls enclosed a compact space. Centered stood an upright piano, veiled by a time-stained frayed sheet. I stepped across the threshold, light playing over the interior. Empty. Just the piano and me. In one corner, a small wooden table burdened with aged papers. My hand trembled slightly as I approached it. My mouth was desert dry. An expectation, sharp and irrational, of someone emerging from the shadows persisted. I lifted the topmost sheet. The ink was faded, the script archaic. Musical notation sprawled across the page. In the margin, unmistakably, my first name, Elias. The date inscribed at the header, 1920. A century passed. My heart gave a sickening lurch. I scanned the accompanying text. References to a caretaker. My surname followed, spelled correctly. It detailed minutiae. My hair color, my height, the specifics of my duties. It even named the brand of flashlight I carried. Nausea surged. The subsequent pages offered variations on the theme. Rough cemetery sketches charting my patrol routes, notes on the denim jeans and work boots I favored. I swallowed, struggling for air, each breath shallow, rapid. My skin felt clammy. How? The aroma of old paper and damp stone filled the air. A faint dripping sound punctuated the silence, likely groundwater seepage. The piano waited, mute. Lifting the sheet revealed wood gleaming, impossibly preserved. Tentatively, I depressed a single key. The note resonated, pure, matching the tone heard from outside. A wave of anxiety washed over me. Frantically, I scanned for hidden speakers. Any technological trickery? Nothing. Beneath the stack of papers lay a smaller notebook. I slid it free. Cracked leather cover. Inside, more of the same handwriting. Short entries chronicled nights the caretaker passed by. Caretaker passed 11 to 13 p.m. Flashlight in left hand. Precise routes meticulously recorded. The final entry read, "He will force the door soon. He will find these pages. He will question the nature of this. He must safeguard this place." Comprehension remained elusive. My breathing grew ragged, my pulse a frantic drum against my throat. My legs felt unsteady. I stood there, light sweeping the bare stone walls. No chairs, no benches, no personal effects beyond the piano and its unsettling dossier. A trick? A century-old prank left by a predecessor? But the contemporary details, my flashlight, my clothes, defied that logic. The impulse to gather the papers, to present this impossibility to my supervisor, warred with a strange reluctance, an intuition to leave them undisturbed. Forcing calm, I captured several photographs with my phone. The flash momentarily bleached the room, revealing faint etchings on the walls, random marks, perhaps nascent musical staves, hard to discern. Wiping sweat from my brow, my body remained coiled, ready for flight. A final inspection of the piano. Lifting the lid revealed pristine strings and hammers, free of dust, seemingly maintained. Senseless. Who tended a piano in a crypt unacknowledged by any record? I pressed a sequence of keys. The tones sang out, clear and resonant. Gooseflesh prickled my arms. Stepping back, breathing heavily through my mouth, I lingered a moment longer. The oppressive sense of being observed, despite the stark solitude, became unbearable. I exited into the night air, the contrast sharp against my face. A ragged exhale escaped me. Hands still shaking, I jammed the broken lock back into place as best I could, securing the door. Then, quickly, I retreated towards the main path, mind reeling. The questions multiplied, unanswered. The music, the notes, my name etched into the past. None of it aligned with reality. That slow, pervasive melody echoed in my mind, refusing to fade. Back in the sterile light of the office, I attempted a report. The words felt hollow, omitting the core strangeness. I documented finding an unlisted crypt containing old furnishings. I noted the door lock was damaged and that I had applied a temporary fix. Staring at the blank fields demanding detail, my stomach churned. A headache began its dull throb. I saved the incomplete file, unsent. Who would lend credence to such a tale? I remain the caretaker here. Each night, my rounds take me past that stone structure. Sometimes the piano music drifts faintly. Other nights, silence prevails. I have not ventured inside again. Yet, the thought of it is a constant companion. The images, my name on century-old paper, the impossible details, are indelible. Reason insists on a logical explanation, yet finds none. Every passage near that building quickens my pulse, conjures the memory of that haunted melody. Is the piano still draped? Are the papers still arrayed on the small table? Has more been written? My silence with colleagues and my supervisor persists. They pose no inquiries. I offer no disclosures. My flashlight beam stays rigidly forward in that sector. Yet, when my gaze invariably flickers towards that weathered door, I recall the music, its sudden cessation at my knock. The tension resides permanently in my chest whenever the building enters my peripheral vision. Answers elude me. No neat resolution presents itself. There is only the persistent memory, the 1920 date, the script describing my present existence, the piano's flawless tone, and the profound quiet that descended the instant I breached the threshold. I cannot forget the wrongness of standing in that dusty void, no musician at the keys, hearing only the sound of my own frantic breath. That is my burden. That is what keeps the edge sharp whenever I walk the cemetery's shadowed rear paths after dark. I perform my duties. I try not to linger, but sometimes, carried on the night breeze, I swear I hear it still. The spectral outline of that melody emanating from behind the heavy door that has no right to exist.